Hello, what's going on? My name is Rich Ryan. Today, we are talking about the sled pull for Hyrox. This is one of the most challenging stations in a Hyrox event and can really make or break a race. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about two different forms of the sled pull that I suggest. I'm gonna talk about some very hard do's and don'ts for your race day. We're gonna touch on some pacing and some training tips as well. So first, if you have not, hit me with a like, hit me with a subscribe, just so you can get all of this hybrid training info directly into your feed so you don't miss anything about getting stronger, faster, with better endurance. All right, let's do it. So we're gonna start by talking about two different styles of sled pull that I would recommend. One is going to be for a bigger, stronger athlete, and one is going to be for an athlete who might need to create a little bit more power right from the start. But before that, there are two key elements that I want to talk about with the sled pull. And the first one is going to be, no matter what you think you can do or how strong you think you are, you're going to want to walk this sled backwards. There's a little box in Hyrox where you can stay within during your sled pull, and it gives you about 4 to 6 steps backwards, depending on how strong and how big of steps you can take. So in training, you're going to want to practice walking backwards with that sled, with that rope in your hand. Going hand over hand is going to be really, really taxing and probably not much faster unless you are brutally strong and have incredibly strong arms and biceps. But the weight in the pro is just so heavy that I can't foresee that ever really being a case where it would be an advantage. And if you are that big and strong, you're probably not great at running, so it's not going to necessarily help your overall results. So I would walk this thing back, and it gives you a bit of a time to recover as well in the during the pull. The other part is where the rope is managed. A lot of times you'll see athletes in this, and maybe you've done this yourself, where you walk backwards, you catch the rope, and you trip, you fall, it stops your progress, you gotta kind of start over. So always have the rope off to either your right or left side, whichever you're most comfortable with, so that it's out of your way. And after each pull, make sure you're moving that rope to the side even further to create space behind you. It may seem intuitive to have that rope directly under your legs so that when you walk back, it's just like right in your center. But truly, it doesn't matter that much. It's just a matter of being comfortable with where that rope is. And I would absolutely recommend moving it off to the side so that rope is managed and kicking it away and out of your box, like to the side of the box, just to make sure you're not stepping on it, because falling down on this is really going to cause you a lot of time. It's going to create a lot of frustration. It's going to really hurt your momentum. And because we are walking backwards with it, the momentum is really going to be the most important part of the sled pull. So walk that thing back every time and manage that rope appropriately. Those two things, no matter what style of pull and form of the pull that you're going to choose, those two are constant throughout. You'll see every athlete at the highest level of Hyrox doing just that. So let's take a look at the first style of form, which I usually refer to as keeping your chest high, your butt back, and using your momentum. So you can see here as the start, the first thing that I'm going to do is lean back. So that backwards lean is going to create a little bit of that momentum that is going to help move that sled. So this style is going to be better for an athlete who might be a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger, who can move the sled just on the momentum of their body weight alone. We'll talk in the second form, we'll talk about what you need to do to generate a little bit more power if it's stuck, if it's a particularly hard day, or if you're a little bit slighter of an athlete, what that's going to look like. So as I keep my chest up and my butt drops back, it's going to get the majority of my body weight moving backwards so that it can get the most force from the momentum to get that sled going. And then as soon as it starts moving, that's when I open up my hips like it would be from a deadlift position to continue that sled to move backwards, and I start to walk at the exact same time. So you can see moving back 3 or 4 steps and then walking it forward. So let's take a look at that again. So drop butt back. Being in this position is where things are really going to start moving. You can see my back is flat, my chest is up, just like in a deadlift starting position. And because that sled's able to move, because I've generated enough power to come backwards, so you can do a couple of things with this. You could really forcefully drop yourself backwards, or you could simply lean into it depending on your size. And keeping your chest up and your back flat will just make sure that that's a very stable position for your arms. And then as you're coming backwards, I do like to finish with a little bit of a pull in the arm just to get a little bit more. Again, I don't like to start with that pull because it's going to create a lot of tension in your biceps. It's going to really slow down the blood flow as it's constricted. And it's almost like an isometric hold in your biceps. And ultimately, constricting your blood flow at any point of this race is going to be a negative. So keeping your arms straight and just really gripping with your hands as lightly as possible. Might not be possible to keep it light, but not overly gripping it as well. Because same thing, you don't want your constrict that blood flow through your forearms and through your hands. For those of you who might not have the strongest of grip, that might not be possible. I do understand, but you want to make sure that you're not clenched up really, really hard. And your hands are simply just straps that are holding on to that rope, and not the part where you want to, and not trying to focus on moving it with your arms, because it is more of a hips and torso movement. So another thing, as I walk the rope forward, I'm keeping it hand over hand so the rope stays in my hand. This is a great way to cut down on transition and recovery time. A lot of times you'll see athletes throw it down, have to walk back up and pick it back up. That's a way just to work rest into your pull, which is just going to slow you down. When that rope's out of your hands, it's just going to allow you to take some more time and just to kind of give you some recovery time. But this is a pretty early part of the race, and ideally you shouldn't be over the top fatigued here. So keeping that rope in your hand will just kind of keep you honest and pulling it back. So let's take another look again as it comes back. Hips come back first. Again, generating force to move that, taking 5 to 6 steps backwards, final pull to finish. So this style with your chest up and your back flat is going to be a little bit more efficient, and it's going to help be a little bit faster if you can execute it this way. The other style is you're going to want to get your butt lower, and so you're going to be able to create a little bit more momentum from the ground and really pressing into the ground as you're pulling it back. So this is going to be for an athlete who is going to be a little bit slighter, or if in the beginning of your sled pull it's kind of hard to move the thing, this is a great way to kind of get it going. So one thing I do like to recommend is using this lower butt style first, just to get it moving from that furthest position. And as it gets easier, as that weight gets closer, because it will, then changing to a higher butt and a quicker turnaround. So you can see right away the position is different. The position is a lot more flexion in the back to help with that reach, and the butt is going to be a lot lower to help drive your feet into the ground. So you're going to see as it pulls, it's going to be a bit of a larger swing open as well. So another way to kind of think about this is the difference in a stroke rate on the rower. The slower your stroke rate, the more powerful it's going to be. That's what this kind of style is going to be. It's going to be a slower stroke rate, but you're going to be able to move that sled more and do less reps throughout because of that huge pull that you're going to get first with that massive opening of your hips. As those hips are closed, when you drop your butt down lower, it's going to create more room just for you to open them up. So it's going to be a little bit more of a powerful movement. So let's see if we can take a look at this again. Again, dropping the butt drops way down here. And you can see that's creating a lot more momentum as that butt drops down. So it's another way to kind of create more momentum from the sled. Whereas when your butt's a little bit higher, it's not going to create as much of that momentum because you're not dropping down as far, but it is going to be a little bit more taxing. It's going to be a lot more of a bigger, powerful movement. So that's why someone who might be slighter, who might need a little bit more power generation to move that sled would use this technique over the high butt. And then big open swing, and then you still walking that sled backwards with that pull at the end. So aside from creating this mechanical advantage and walking it backwards and with that pull at the end, light hands so you're not gripping it crazy, not tight in your biceps to restrict blood flow, the best way to improve your sled pull time is by the transitions. Moving in and out, running from one side to the other. It's really easy to kind of walk, to drop the rope, to take things pretty slow because of where this is positioned directly after the sled push. In a race, it is very important to think about the pacing in the ski erg and the sled push. The sled pull, I don't believe is that difficult compared to the sled push or the lunges of the wall balls for that matter. But just the position of it being directly after the sled pull, which is the sled push, which is the hardest part of the race, a lot of times you come into this pretty gassed. So a lot of times when this sled pull falls apart for people is that they just went out too hard. And if you get to this point and you're already exhausted, it's going to be hard to kind of get that thing back. So one of the best ways to make the sled pull easier is to go out easier. And it's going to be advantageous for your race long term to keep it pretty easy through the ski erg and the push, so you get to the pull and you're not entirely gassed. For the race, I've found it very helpful to have gloves. I put gloves in my pockets and pull them out and put them on right before the sled pull. Again, it can become a very grip intensive movement, so the gloves are going to be helpful for that. I use like wide receiver gloves that have a tackier surface, just so I don't have to grip it as hard and it can still move as I'm moving backwards. I don't like to wear gloves for the entire race because it's just too warm, so I put them on right after the sled push, take them off after the sled pull, throw them over the side, and don't worry about them. You can use chalk. You can have chalk in your pockets. I've seen some athletes do that, or just chalk up before you get there, and that should also be helpful. But I would work some sort of tackiness onto your hands, whether it is chalk or gloves, and just using it in the best way that's going to work for you. You'll see some athletes like Hunter, he has like gloves, but without the fingers on them, so to keep it a little bit less hot for him. So that is one way to do it. I would have some sort of focus on that, unless you are like big, thick wrist, big, thick forearms, really strong grip strength, and this isn't really a problem for you, then you don't necessarily need to worry about that extra step. So in terms of training, the best way to train for the sled pull is to pull the sled and to improve your deadlift. Those are the two places where you can really see a little bit more bang for your buck. As you saw, the positioning and the opening of the hips is going to be what's going to help create that momentum after your form is on point. And the opening of your hips, that's classic deadlift movement. It could also be a heavy kettlebell swings will become a little bit more powerful to help open up those hips. But the weight is pretty heavy that it's going to be hard to really swing those hips open and create and generate a ton of momentum. So heavy deadlifts are probably going to be your best bet. Working under under total reps of 10, so 3x3, 4x2, and then those higher rep ranges, 90% of your 1 rep max and up are really what's going to help with this type of strength for the sled pull. Also pulling the sled during specific workouts, making sure you're doing it under fatigue, keeping your breathing in check, doing things like longer tempo efforts, and then pulling the sled in between and doing that in kind of like your Hyrox simulation work. I would do the sled pull one to 2 times per week, 3 times per week. If you have that type of time for strength training, it's only going to be helpful. This isn't going to be incredibly crushing on your muscular system, so you can do this pretty often and really get familiar with it. But I would pull it quite a bit, and I would pull it at different rep ranges and different loads as well. So working as heavy as possible, doing 10-meter pulls for essentially doing 1 rep maxes with your pull is going to be pretty helpful. And then also working on your deadlift is where it's going to be. So if this is a strength thing and you need to improve your overall strength to help your sled pull, then deadlifts, kettlebell swings, and just pulling that sled. All right, so there you have it. Those are my main tips for the sled pull for Hyrox. Make sure you're walking that thing back, and with the sled pull, 5 to 6 steps backwards, and always managing that rope. Figure out what works best for you in terms of your chest and butt position based on the type of powerful athlete that you are, and just give it a shot. Drop a comment below, let me know what you think, and hit me with a like, hit me with a subscribe, just so you can get all of the Hyrox DecaFit content coming to your feed. All right, we'll talk to you soon.